Good morning, good afternoon, and of course, good evening. You will all know the gentleman sat to my either right or left. It's always difficult because this camera's in reverse, but it's Mr. Keith Elwin. Keith, thank you so much for joining us, mate.
Yeah, no worries.
Big time, but really busy period for you at the moment. With Kong coming out, how have you felt that's been received over the past week or so?
Oh, it's really positive, I think. I think people are loving the shot flow and the pretty unique layout. This layout it was tough. Try not to repeat yourself. It starts getting pretty tough. So I think I still managed to make it mine, yet not something we've already seen.
That's the
I
part.
imagine a few more years of this, it's going to get really tough. But I'll enjoy the ride right now.
How's that transition been? How's the transition been from, I guess, hobbyist to excellent player, and then now pinball designer? This must be, I guess you get used to it now, but it must be a weird transition initially for you.
It was, because I was an operator too. So, I've always loved playing pinball, always loved playing pinball. But now that I'm designing them and, play testing them to death, like I've been playing Kong for months now.
Sure.
And it's just like my enjoyment of playing isn't what it was. But I really enjoy designing them. I, enjoy coming up with the rules and the layout and, you know, seeing people play the game. I enjoy. I still love my older games, a lot of the classics I own. But yeah, that's pretty much the only difference is now that I don't really go to the arcade and play the newest games because, now that it's my job, it doesn't feel fresh and exciting anymore.
Well, I understand exactly this because I was in my job. I was a hobbyist for sport, and then it became my job. So now, it's sort of, on my off time, I probably don't do the thing that I had for a hobby because it's consuming. How much time do you play pinball on a daily basis, just in terms of your job? So it would be Kong and a build up to Kong, and then I guess the expansion of the code.
Yeah, it all depends where it is in the project. We were trying to cram everything in before the stream, so we had a lot of stuff that needed testing. So I was playing it, a couple hours a day, and had like two other code testers who were pretty much doing the same. But we were like at least a month we were just jamming on it a couple hours a day, and then after the stream, obviously we can let up a bit, kind of relax, breathe. Okay, now regroup ourselves. Let's go over all the remaining rules that need to go in the game. What's working, what's not so far in the game. Stuff like that.
I'm really interested in what you said about keeping your designs fresh, because obviously you jumped onto the scene with a number of games which I thought were very, very different to anything that we'd seen before. And you'll be aware of certain designers have a reputation for having certain layouts and certain things. I think credit to you. I think it would be hard for me to say, oh, this is an Elwin design. So to keep that freshness and to keep the difference in shots is incredible. How much of that stuff is going through your mind? And I mean your mind before you put it on a white word or anything like that. How much of it is going through your mind, shots and how they work?
Yeah, a lot, too much probably, because it's easy to design a smooth flowing game. What's tough is design an easy flowy game that hasn't been done a billion times. That's the trick.
And are you actively trying to produce something fresh every time?
As fresh as I can, yeah. I'm trying to remain, have the shot flow remain, because I like the fast flowy games. Pat Lawler was my favorite designer. I mean, he had a good variety of fast flowy games, and some of his slower games I didn't like as much. Like, Twilight Zone, I didn't think that was that fun to shoot. Even though I thought it was a great game, I didn't think it was that fun to shoot. So I kind of kept, his philosophy on the faster games that he did, and you know, make that my own. And like I said, it's coming up with different ways of incorporating flow that it hasn't been already done a billion times. That personally, when I entered Stern Pinball, I was really sick of the fan layout, two ramps, pop bumpers at the top, which just destroy game flow, in my opinion. So that's why you don't see them in my games.
Well, it's okay. So flow is a really. I've heard you speak so many times, and we'll talk about it for the benefit of people that haven't heard you say it before. I understand, that kinetic feedback is important to you, but flow is obviously a massive part of the game for you.
Yes, yes. I love the older games. You get them up in a pop. There's not that much to do. You're up in a pop bumpers, you're shaking them, and you're trying to do that. But on a modern game with modern scoring, I mean, is this really doing anything for you? I just kind of want the ball back. Let's go. Let's do something. If there's it's an interesting mech that slows the ball down for a bit, cool. But if it's just something that you've seen a billion times, like a pop bumper nest, I mean, I don't think anyone today finds that fascinating or interesting. Whereas back in the day, like Gary would said, it was required, because it, kind of ate up ball time, give the player like they accomplish something. But we can do that now with the modern ball save system. It's like, oh, I felt screwed. No, you get your ball back. You get your ball back. Like in Kong and pretty much all my games, you get multiple ball saves per ball based on how well you're playing. So that kind of makes up for the fact that you're not plunging into pops to eat up time.
Yeah, well, it's obviously we've not had. We'll talk about Kong later on in the interview. Clearly, that's why you're here, and it's your latest game. I've been fascinated to watch you from afar, from over the other side of the Atlantic, and watch, I guess, the evolution of your games as well. Particularly in terms of your shots, which I won't be the only person. I think the first time we saw Godzilla, the ball was taking these crazy ball paths. Particularly, you go from the upper flipper, and the upper flipper will go over the upper part of the playfield. Then you can hit it the lower part of the playfield, and sort of, and it's going behind Mecha Godzilla. And I think you clearly got a very, very clear understanding of geometry, and certainly shots that appear that they shouldn't work. I've got Jaws as a triumph, by the way. Congratulations! It's borderline my favorite game, and I love it. The spinner shot that goes up on the left hand side and loops back down. It almost goes up in a U. It feels like it shouldn't work, but it does. It feels like the geometry. Even maybe the helicopter shot in Jurassic Park, for instance. You think that shouldn't work. How much time do you spend on these shots? And I guess my question is, the inertia or the energy the ball's going to need to make it round these things. You've got a lot of these wave ramps now that go certainly on Avengers Infinity Quest, very much a very vertical ramp on there, very much so on Jaws as well, which takes it up to the upper playfield. How much time are you putting into that stuff and actually throwing balls around wireforms and ramps?
I think you can just kind of see what's going to work and what's not. For your example on that Jaws shot, the left orbit thing wasn't originally going to do that. I originally had it orbiting around to the right side, and it just didn't work. It was really clunky. So I redesigned that at the 11th hour to just, kind of do a little U-turn and come flying back down to the inlay. And I was like, wow, we just kind of built one, prototyped it, and it was like, yeah, this actually works pretty well. And as far as the ramps, yeah, it's more trial and error. But based on like we've done them since Jurassic Park, so we can basically just take a Jurassic Park ramp, cut it, kind of rebend it to what we need, and just jam it on a whitewood. Okay, can you make this? Yes. Okay, so now we can actually design it with kind of the same parameters.
Yeah, it's incredible, particularly if you threw that shot together at the last minute. It took me, probably had the game a month before I realised actually I can backhand this shot as well, which has really opened up the game to me, and I cannot praise that game highly enough. I think it's always very frustrating when maybe there's a dream theme, and it either happened so long ago. It's sort of Terminator 2 would be one. It's so long ago. I almost want somebody to do T2 now in a sort of a modern game with a screen and everything. But Jaws is very much a dream theme, and you nailed it. You absolutely nailed it. The Quint Shack shot, the timing of it is absolutely perfect. And when I play pinball, there's some of those shots where. Do you ever consider this, the length of time it takes to get back to the flipper, for instance? Is that important?
Oh yeah, that's why I add all the little swoops and swirls to my wireforms. You got to give something to look. Nothing I hate more than like a straight ramp. You
Sure.
shoot a ramp entrance and it goes straight to the in lane. To me, that's just the most boring thing. I basically accomplished the same thing on Jaws in that left orbit without making it a ramp. It just drops straight down. Might as well save that vertical space for something cool. So that's why we added the gigantic kind of U-turn wireform from the upper playfield, because we had all that space.
Well, it really works, and just the timing of it just seems to allow you, so much time. And I've often, in fact, I produced a video yesterday, and I was talking about shots being where they're supposed to be for me, and the difference between a shot being where it's supposed to be and actually dialing a shot in. And obviously, you're you're one of the best pinball players of all time, so you're gonna have a skill set that's far in advance. When you're planning it out, are there are there positions where you think that shot's not going to work in terms of it's at the wrong angle? Or that's I'm fascinated by the geometry of a game when you've got it on the whitewood.
Yeah, so I suffered that too. Kind of when I was making my homebrew Archer, I was like, oh, this shot should work, and then it's like, oh no, it doesn't. And then as my layouts evolve, I can quickly just spot shots that aren't going to work very well. Like, if I look at some of the homebrews going on, it's like, oh man, that's going to be a tough shot. And then I'll watch video of it, and it's like, yeah, no one can hit it. It's you just start to recognize, but also some shots will surprise me that they do work.
Yeah, well, you've quickly gained a reputation of making shots that work, and I think when because Archer was, have I got this right? Archer was Iron Maiden, basically. Was that what it became?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. I think when we see the release of Kong, it's quite incredible, really, because I think you've gained a reputation where we know that the shots are going to work, but we don't know what we're going to get with it, really. How's that? Can you just, before we get on to Kong, can you just talk me through that conversation that went from you do your homebrew, obviously you're well known at the time because you're winning tournaments playing. That time that took you from, I guess, that first ever offer from Stern and when they contacted you. Can you just talk us through that for people that haven't heard the story?
So I always, ever since I was like, I can say like 10, 12, I always was in the backyard making kind of, maybe not exactly pinball. Yeah, I would design, more like a pachinko type bagatelle stuff with just plywood and nails, because my dad just had all this stuff sitting around, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna build this, and then we would play together, put rubber bands across nails and stuff. And then like 1998, I designed a South Park homebrew, like way back in the day, before anyone was really homebrewing. My friend and I designed it, and it was basically running on Popeye software. And we took it to a show, and I get one like homebrew. It was like one of the first homebrew things ever. And then we were so sick of it that after the show, we just sold it, which is I regret. And then I've always kind of wanted to tinker with design. I used to play Pinball Construction Set growing up. The EA game where you can just move pops and flippers wherever and then play test them. And then when the homebrew stuff started coming on the market, like Archer was P-Rock, and my brother had just retired, and I was like, hey, if you're bored, do you want to make a pinball? And he was like, eh. And I was like, and our favorite show at the time was Archer, and it's like, how about an Archer pinball? And he's like, ooh, yeah, okay. So I just went about, I wanted to just like, hey, I can do whatever I want. I don't have to worry about licensor. I don't have to worry about budget. So I just, threw together a 4 flipper game and tried to put together some unique stuff. I really wanted to do like the bullseye thing in the middle. It's like, okay,
Yep.
depending on where you hit it, it's 1x, 2x, 3x. And so that was born. And then it got traction, and George reached out to me. He's like, hey, we're not going to live forever. So, we want to get some younger designers in here. And he offered me the job, and the rest is history.
Well, I'm going to bring Enzo in a second. We're all really grateful for it because, I definitely, you'll be able to see from the comments, I definitely are comfortable. I don't like speaking for anyone but myself, but on this, I'm comfortable. I think you gave the pinball industry a real shot in the arm with some new ideas and innovation at exactly the time it needed it. A real, what I think's a purple patch, like a new golden age for pinball, which I think is now. And you've been a massive, massive part of that. So yeah, I can only really thank you for that you said yes, which, because it must have been daunting. I'm guessing to when George came calling. Obviously you'd have played loads of George Gomez games, and I guess he was a bit of an idol of yours as well. That must have been a daunting phone call or meeting or whatever.
Oh yeah. What made it easier was so I was hired first, and then George is like, "Hey, I can either set you up an existing coder and engineer, or we can hire a new engineer, a new coder. You guys just be in your own little cell. I mean, I'll check in and make sure you guys are aren't screwing up, but I'm gonna put you guys in your own cell. We're gonna see what you guys do." So we hired Rick Nagel and Harrison Drake, and the three of us like instantly became friends, and um, now we've worked on every single game together. So it's a team effort for sure. I Rick's being an awesome coder. He doesn't care about pinball rules, so
Okay.
I write the rules, and he's just like, "Yeah, cool, that sounds great." And, we'll get wingman coders. I've got some talented ones, Elizabeth Gieske, Joshua Henderson, both you know talented players and already have a grasp on the rules. So we'll bounce ideas back and forth, and it's having an amazing solid team really helps.
Well, it's clear, and I think for all the reputation you have for your shots and your layouts, which are innovative and brilliant and fun, as pinball's got to be fun.
Hmm.
Nobody ever, I never hear it associated with your game. So often when pinball machines get released, hear people say, "Oh, I hope the code gets done. I hope the code gets developed." I don't think anybody ever says that with your games, which are fully coded and coded really well. Let me just bring Enzo in here. So he's actually hiding behind my camera. Enzo, you look like you're in a nightclub, mate.
It kind of feels like it. It's 10:30 at night here in Australia. So, Keith,
How you
how are you?
doing?
Hi.
Yeah, I'm better now. The internet's finally working.
I was okay. You've been having some internet troubles. Well,
Uh,
you've come at the perfect time, Enzo, because I've sort of been getting getting Keith's backstory and talking sort of generically about his pinball journey and his baby steps into design and just how he's sort of become the main man in pinball, and it's been incredible. But I think it's probably time to move the conversation onto a Kong now, which is obviously the reason why we're all here. Everybody's incredibly excited by this game, and as I've already mentioned, well, I know at least 4 people that have already ordered one, and there's just a confidence in your games that, for all the reasons we've already explained, that they're just going to work. If I bring the video in now, hopefully this works. There you go. Enzo, I'll start playing it, and do you want to start asking Keith some questions about this absolutely wonderful game here?
yeah,
Just
I
going to
mean,
press
look,
play now.
from we've obviously known for a while that there was rumored to be this theme and what you were working on. I think one of the things that straight away, kind of when we got this trailer, what blew me away was just how much was obviously in this game, shot wise, and the like one thing straight away that kind of got me was like, I wonder, like, this layout, how long it took. Like, did you already have this vision of things that you wanted to bring in, or would you already have a plan and then go, I know I heard you say in other interviews that George was kind of hassling you to do this theme for a while. Were you already working on something and then you kind of said, "Oh, this would work in King Kong," or was it completely new?
Yeah, so George started right after Godzilla, and I was just like, "Oh man, I don't want to do back-to-back kaiju games." So he's like, all right, no monster theme. How about Jaws?" I was like, Okay. It's yeah, it's a monster theme that also has never been done before, which it's part of the appeal to me of why I ended up accepting Kong. It's like, okay, it's technically never really been done before. I know there were a
Mm.
few prototype, Data East ones, and if I played it, I don't remember, but everyone knows who's played it says, yeah, this thing sucks. So, but I looked at it, it looked interesting. So I was like, all right, I'll take on the project, and then, but I wanted Kevin O'Connor, just, hey, here's this thing you did 30 years ago that never really saw the light of day. How do you want some redemption? And he's like, oh yeah, for sure. And so, yeah, I probably started designing it, maybe 2.5 years ago now. And just, yeah, I just wanted something to, I'll be 100% honest with you. I didn't think anyone would like how Godzilla shot. So I'm actually shocked that people think, oh, that's a great shooting game. Because, to me, it was really hard to dial in those shots because there's so many transitions, ball guide into a different ball guide that always creates chatter. I was just afraid. I was like, oh, this is super clunky. And I didn't think anyone would like it when I released that. And I was surprised when it was so well received. So then I was like, okay, well, I'll do more stuff like this with the intersecting ball guides. And Kong's no exception. Like, you have, looks like one orbit one way, but it's only in orbit one way. It goes somewhere else the other direction, stuff like that. It's be doing something different, but it also creates less smooth shots. So it's kind of a trade-off. So that's kind of how I approach this game. I'll do it in the same vein as Godzilla, but I'm obviously don't want to repeat it. And so I made it quite different at the bottom. The slingshots are way closer than most of my layouts. The flippers are a little bit offset. So it shouldn't feel the same at all from Godzilla and Kong.
Have you ordered one, Enzo?
Yeah. I mean, I had already ordered one before we kind of even saw the trailer, so because it's like it's Keith, right? And one of my favorite games of yours is actually Avengers: Infinity Quest. The way it shoots and layout. I'm not a very good player, and I struggle with deep code games, and that is a really deep coded game. But like, it's got some of the best shots in pinball. And then seeing when this dropped, and then we had that top left-hand flipper, and then the kickback from Kong, I was pretty mesmerized by it because I was going, there's only so much you can do in the playfield, right? And then, there are so many designers out there now. Seeing something that had just different stuff in it again, was what kind of blew me away. So, and the homage to bringing Kevin in with the artwork, I think was great. When I first saw it, I was kind of like, whoa, there's a lot going on. And then I found out Kevin had been brought in because I was like, that does look a lot like the Data East one, which there was, whatever it was, like 8 or 9 of them. I think it's 9. I think one burnt down or something. But you get a sense of that nostalgia from the 90s. It looks very 90s, which I really liked. And it made sense when I heard that it was obviously you guys have brought him in. So it was a great idea. I love it. I honestly think that it looks awesome.
Yeah, it does. I'm fascinated by the offset flippers, actually. So because obviously you've got what's going on the left-hand side where it obviously feeds into the in lane and has that that sort of crazy ball path there. Is that why the flippers are offset?
Yeah. It's exactly why I wanted to, do something different in in-lane, out-lane area. I was thinking, okay, it'd be cool to have like a Fathom type in-lane area, but I also not the biggest fan of those. But so the compromise is, okay, we'll have a normal in-lane on the left, and then we'll do a Fathom style to the left of that. So you have a normal in-lane, then you have the Fathom, reverse in-lane, out-lane. So in order to do that, everything had to shift over to the right a little bit.
So, but obviously Jack's done what he's done with the Danger Room.
Oh God, that was way offset, man.
Yeah, but I mean, you're both doing this stuff. You're obviously both aware of what you're designing. Obviously, you're in house. Was that a conversation? Or we're both doing offset designs at the same time?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I saw his Danger Room. I was like, oh yeah, I'm doing something kind of similar, but it's like up at the top.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible. The just going on the shots earlier, the kickback shot where it's Kong punching it back, right?
Yeah.
again, that's crazy innovation. How long did that take to work through on the whiteboard? On the whiteboard, sorry.
Actually, not that long at all. The trick was the hole that we call it the howdy hole, because if you look at the routing, it looks like you're wearing a hat. It's kind of shaped like a derby, and we had to find out the perfect way to do that. So if the ball, when we hit the target and don't fire it back, we treat it as a scoop, and it drops into this hole. So that was the only tricky part, is getting that right. So we didn't want the ball swirling back and forth too much. If we move the hole too close, then it gets really clunky. So that was pretty much the only testing we had to do on that.
Yeah, again, it's just more innovation. What have you seen, Enzo? You'd like to ask Keith about this, because I know you've been really studying this game and the shots.
Look, I think there's an awesome kind of blend of flow and chaos, right? It must be hard to strike that balance, because I think when you've got like something as big as Kong, I'm sure there must be a heap of stuff that you had to kind of work that got scrapped, that ideally, in prototyping, because it must be so challenging as a designer. I've mucked around on some apps before just to try and, what can I make, and even just trying to work out one shot, let alone however many ball paths. Do you know how many ball paths are in this game?
No, but we didn't have very much room for GI, so we have a lot of spotlights.
Yeah, so it must be just challenging to try and balance that. That's the biggest thing for me, because I don't, trying to even like making sure that biplane shot ends up where it ends up. Like, how do you balance that? Like, how long did that take?
You're talking about like which feeds which flipper?
Yeah, just in general. I mean, the layout is so unique, right? And then trying to get that balance of flow and still having a bit of chaos, but that balance.
Yeah. So originally there wasn't, in my mind, there wasn't that balance. So the biplane ramp used to feed the left flipper, and then I discovered, like, all right, 2/3 of the shots feed the left flipper. So then I changed it to feed the right flipper to get the correct balance. So it's just a matter of, I'll print out the CAD file and I'll start drawing, where's this shot feed? Where's this shot feed? And then, if I see, a bunch of them feeding the same area, to me, that's a problem. And, if you have a game that's like all ramps, it creates a problem. It's like, okay, these ramps are going to feed, one or two places or three. So it reduces the chaos. So I was trying to keep some of the chaos. So, the drop targets had to stay. The whole magnet pit area was designed because there's no pop bumpers in this game. So this will take the place of a pop bumper and just kind of throw the ball out of control. Stuff like that. The gong is, it's fairly close to the player. And, if you hit it really hard, you have to be on your toes. So it was a balance. Some shots are going to create chaos, and, others are, going to do like something cool on the ramp, or, something that you haven't seen before, hopefully.
I think we always get something we haven't seen before. I'm actually, you made me laugh there, because thinking, if what you're saying is you put so many shots in there that you had to remove some of the general illumination, basically, right? That's a microcosm for what everybody does with pinball. So it's a bit like me in my lounge, and I had like an L-shaped sofa in the lounge, and I needed another pinball machine. And I thought, particularly when my oldest daughter moved out, I thought, I'm not sure I need that other part of my sofa. So let's get rid of the sofa. Let's get rid of half of the sofa and put another pinball machine in it, which is basically what you've done on the playfield.
Yeah.
How aware of you, something going back to something you said earlier, which is ball saves, and something I'd be fascinated to know if this is the case. Something I really noticed at the start of Godzilla, which is fascinating to find out that you didn't think that people would receive that well. That's hilarious. At the start of the game, I think it's quite generous, and I'm pleased it's generous. It keeps giving me the ball back. It feels like at the start it's saying, "Go on, have another go. Go on. We're not going to punish you at the start." So I think, particularly on location, it's what can make people walk away from a machine if they put their coins in or scan in or whatever they're doing now. I think that can make people. So I thought it was very generous, but also I thought there's enough in there whereby you can access enough of the game without being a brilliant player. You can feel like you're getting rewarded by any of the make the mini modes that you could get to a multi-ball easy. I just feel there's encouragement in the code at the start of the game, but also enough if you're going to go and rampage through all four locations and really get into the depth of the game and do the tanks and the trains and all of that stuff. How aware of you when you're coding it are you of thinking I've got to offer up something at the start for the beginner?
Oh yeah, very, very aware. That's one of George's, peeves too. He's like, I don't want to press start and wait 10 minutes for something to happen. It's like, we got to give you something close to the start button that's, fairly easy to hit. In the case of Kong, the spider pit's right there, the gong's right there. You're going to hit one of those two things. If not, then, the drop targets also, start the combos mode, which is like its own mode. Even the stand-up targets, we still have this double playfield scoring, but it's also in mode 2, because if you keep hitting each individual stand-up, it starts scoring more and more points. So even if you have nothing running, it's worth shooting those. So, it's stuff like that, just ancillary stuff that you're accidentally going to start, especially, on location or like they can't hear the game, so if nothing interesting is happening, they're going to get bored and walk away. And yeah, as far as the ball saves, we use an adaptive ball save system. So if you have a really crappy ball 1, the ball saver on ball 2 is going to adjust to be much more generous.
Really?
Yeah. If you look at
wow.
If you go into settings, you'll see something target ball time. And that's how you adjust that. So I think it defaults to like 2 minutes or something, and it however long your first ball was, it looks at the target game time and then it adjusts the ball save accordingly.
That's incredible.
Yes.
But
so if you're ever wondering why you had a really, really bad first ball, but then wow, the ball save is going forever on my second ball.
It's you. You've done it. It's not me playing. Yeah, it's you.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it can go up to 30 seconds if you had a really bad first ball. So
yeah. So even when I play well, you get the credit. Sorry, Enzo.
I was
going
just going to ask, because obviously I know you've done a couple of awesome interviews with Loser Kid and the boys from Triple Drain, and that our viewers or Chris's viewers may not have seen those. But one of the things about this license, there were so many options that people were like, oh, is there going to be like vintage Kong, or is there going to be Peter Jackson's Kong? Obviously, we ended up with the book version, which was a smart idea, because obviously less dealing with licensees because the book, I guess, was a bit like Alice, where it's free for all. You had said that as long as things like, she wasn't like a damsel in distress and all that. One of the things that I was seeing a bit of confusion about is, are you actually playing as her, who's an explorer in this game, or are you playing as someone else when you walk up to the game?
I know it's confusing right now because our intro isn't done, but at game start, Kong is in New York and captured. So as soon as you press start, you'll see we have these theater curtains pull open, but we just have a logo there for now. So hopefully next code update that will be in there. But what's happening is Kong has been captured and you're at the theater, you're waiting to see the grand reveal of Kong. But first, Carl Denham's going to show you the making, how we got here, how we captured Kong. So they're going to show you the adventures of the island. So when you start a mode, it goes from film grain to kind of like live action. And all the island scenes is kind of the, cell shaded Kong, because it has kind of this fantasy vibe to it. Whereas when Kong's in New York, it's more, darker lighting, harsh lighting, because it's his real time. This is really happening. So, you're basically watching the scenes of how all this unfolded. And then when obviously we have to jump back and forth because you don't want your game to be completely linear, which is insane. It's like, well, I start in an island and it, end up in New York City. It's like, well, that's going to be so linear and boring that you're going to be stuck on the island most of the time. So obviously there's things that we have to jump back and forth, like where he's climbing a building. Obviously that happens later in the book, but to keep the game itself interesting, we have to do that. But the overall, story arc is you're watching the footage of all this stuff, and then when you like one of the New York City modes, okay, now you're in real time, he's on display, and then obviously he gets loose and wreaks havoc.
Did you get any idea? Sorry, Enzo.
No, go. There's a bit of delay. Go, Chris.
I was going to say, so you've read the book before you've designed the game, or when you're going to do it. Did you read the book and find any ideas and think, I'm going to take that and I'm going to make a shot out of it or a mech out of it. How much influence did that have?
Yeah, the book was fascinating because it's only 60 pages, I think, and Kong is in New York for 3 pages.
Okay.
Almost the entirety takes place on the island. And so, you know, it's tough because when you think of King Kong, you think of him on the Empire State Building. You know, that's barely part of the story. So yeah, and you know, there's much more island adventure in the book. Like the spider, you know, the spider pit plays a much bigger role than in any of the movies. So yeah, so I focused on the pit of animals there, the octopus insect, which is only in the book. That's never been in the movies. And the two-legged lizard did, I think, make an appearance in the first movie, but I don't know if it made it into any of the others. So you know, kind of focused, you know, that area specifically. And then yeah, we had to kind of take our own stab at a story. So we hired a script writer and it's like, okay, yeah, we'll make this an adventure type thing. You know, it's basically the same characters, but they're there for different reasons. Just to make the story more interesting, make it our own. And you know, yeah, like I said, she's not just some, you know, ditzy blonde there tied up half the time. She's actually, you know, there. And it's also not a love story. It's, you know, she doesn't fall in love with Kong because in the book that, you know, doesn't really happen. She's trying to get away. She doesn't want anything to do with him, you know.
Does he fall in love with her though?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's a one-way love story.
I've had a few of those myself in my time, to be honest with you. Probably
yeah.
Enzo, as in that nightclub there. Enzo, what did you want to ask?
No, so basically, so just to recap, so we start off the game. He's already captured. He's in New York. Then they're basically because the guy shot a documentary on the island. So we're experiencing that documentary ultimately.
Yes. So the island scenes you're experiencing kind of flashbacks to, you know, how we got here. And then you know, when you climb the building, you get to certain floors. Like it's a New York City event. Okay, now we're in real time. We're in New York, you know, and then the story folds from New York, which most people are familiar with there from, you know, when he's captured to when he's on top of the building. But a lot of people aren't familiar with the island from the book.
Well, and it kind of like the good thing about it, I guess, is that, like you said, with Kong, a lot of people don't realize that he's hardly in New York in the book. Having that kind of trying to capture in a playthrough, like, well, you know, we need a balance of obviously the jungle and the New York, and it kind of makes more sense now knowing that you know he's in the corner there in New York, and that is kind of where we're at, and then the rest is kind of what's happened and you know how we got here. And I think it must have been hard to, because you kind of don't really notice that it sticks out a little bit because the rest of it is all jungle and colorful, whereas that corner of the playfield is New York. Was that challenging to try and find that kind of like, how do we make it blend? Because the gong's right in front, which is a fantastic mech. Because I didn't actually realize the gong was a kickback, and then obviously the spring releases. So you've got a 2-in-1 mech there. But that is obviously, it looks like it's in the New York area. But then when you kind of look at a different view of it, you realize, well, it is, but it blends well, like it works. So it must have been challenging.
Yeah, New York was always supposed to be kind of the back right corner. That gong mech is kind of like the borderline. The only real issue we came across is the building has this climb meter of all these inserts. It's like, okay, well, obviously the building has to be here. And then we switch back to a gong. And it's just one of those, okay, you know, do I want to make a good game or do I want to make a game that makes sense? And, you know, it's like choose. I'll choose to make a good game, even, you know, if the artwork jumps New York back to the island, back to New York. And it's like, all right, you know, I'll take the blame for that. But yeah, I didn't want to move the gong elsewhere because it didn't really fit anywhere else. So.
Do you get nervous?
I think it works well.
Sorry, Enzo. We got someone in the States, we've got someone in Australia, and someone in the UK. So we're reliant on technology. I was just going to ask Keith, do you get nervous before a release to see what the reaction is going to be?
No, not really. It's more of a relief because you know everyone knows I'm doing it. I'd be like, oh, I'm not what Kong. You know, then once it actually is leaked, and it's like, oh, fine, I can talk about it finally. You know.
Yeah, I mean, it gets out quite a lot, doesn't it? There's quite a lot of leaks. So yes, everyone tends to know this. I can't remember the last time there was a surprise release. Was I can't think from anyone really. Sorry, Enzo.
No, I was just saying, I'm curious to ask Keith this because You know, pinball's interesting because it's only one of the small things I've only collected where everything is so discreet and hush hush. Whereas in like video game industry, we know years in advance that they're working on Cyberpunk or that they're working on the next whatever it is. Do you find that like, I mean, was it just easy just for everyone to know?
I
Like I know
mean,
licensing, you don't want your competitors to know that you're doing Kong, right? But I guess once I don't know. So I've always thought it would be better to get kind of feedback earlier, maybe. Like, what's your take on all that?
yeah, it would be, but also I know like it's a lot of it has to do with licensing restrictions. You
Mm,
know, obviously in case of this game, we could have, you know, just started teased it and it would have been fine. But if it was a licensed game, then we're like, oh yeah, we're gonna do this, saying the licensors like, oh, okay, well the clock starts now, start paying us. You know, so
yeah,
you know,
okay.
there's a
Yeah,
rhyme and reason for everything that you know.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, right.
that's absolutely fascinating, actually. And I mean, the thing is, the competitors know. Everybody knows. You must all know what everybody else is doing. How how much how much do you pay attention to what everybody else is doing? Other companies, I guess it's different in house. Other Stern designers, because you know you can walk across the office. But how much do you pay attention to what other games that are coming out?
Yeah, I mean, because you know, I'm a pinball player. Obviously, I'm not as passionate as I used to be, like traveling to tournaments and stuff. But you know, I still enjoy seeing you know other people's new releases and seeing what they're coming up with.
Yeah, yeah, no, Bob. Yeah, I did often wonder if every time you do a game, everyone thinks, "Oh no, Keith's done another game again now." Because I just think you've set the bar so high. I really do, and but I think that's always good in anything when you have that level of competition. It forces everybody else to, I think, to up their game, which I think is precisely what's happening. I'm interested, actually, Keith, in so we've got animations on this. We had animations on Jurassic Park. How much different is that to doing a game where you're dealing with animations on the screen as opposed to Jaws thinking, well, actually, I've got to cut this movie scene into here and work around that? That appears to me like it'd be almost a completely different skill
Mm,
set, really.
Yeah, so it's a give and take. So the advantage I have on Kong is I can do whatever I want in the mode, and these guys will make animations to match. Whereas, like in Jaws, it's a great example of it's like, okay, well, here's the scene of the shark floating away. How do I design a mode around that? You know, it's tough. It's nice to be able to do that sometimes, but also it can be a hindrance. Godzilla was easy because it was just like smash, 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 punch. You know, but yeah, Jaws was a much tougher challenge because there's, you know, you watch the entire 2 hour movie, there's probably like 10, 12 minutes of actual action in it. And the
Sure.
rest is, you know, three guys sitting around talking. So it's like, you know,
mm,
that was the tough one to tackle. So, but we, you know, we added the bounty hunt system, which was all our animations just to give the player, you know, something else to do besides, you know, just sitting on the boat waiting for the shark.
Can I ask a question? It's completely indulgent. It's self-indulgent. I'm just going to ask. I'm going to go. You're in front of me, so I'm going to ask you now. If I'm hunting a shark if I'm doing the Mako shark and whatever I've got to do, you know, 3 ramps, 6 ramps, or whatever, and so many, and I don't make it. I can't even believe I'm asking this, but I'm going to. If I don't make it, do I then have to hit the fishing reel again to get that bounty back, so as I can restart that mode?
I believe so, but I think then the requirements are cut in half. So if you
mm.
do a mode you've already done and failed,
Yeah.
it's much easier to catch the shark because he's already halfway worn down.
Mm.
Okay, thank you, thank you. I could have gone onto Pinside and searched it, but you're right in front of me, so I thought I'd ask. The video mode in Jaws is sensational. What are the plans video wise on this one on Kong?
Video mode?
Yeah,
I don't know, man. Probably not on this one.
no, you don't think you'll do one?
Uh, I think Josh just lent itself perfectly because of the video game tie-in. They had the one scene where he's playing Killer
Yeah,
Shark, and I was like, oh
Yeah.
man, that could totally make that a video mode. And yeah, we all went to when Jaws they did a re-release over the summer, and Stern sent us all, you know, go watch the movie. And you know, some of the guys on the team hadn't seen it in 30 years. So we all were at the theater. We all sat next to each other, me, Harrison, and Rick, and we were watching the movie. And then that scene comes up where he's playing that, and I was like, "Oh my god, we got to make a video mode of this." And Rick's like, "Oh, cool, it sounds fun," because Rick's from the video game industry, so it was like, we'll throw it back to him. And then I sit down designing it, and originally it was you can only fire forward, and I was like, "Oh, all right, it's almost there. It's kind of sucks." So then we added, left, right, center shots, and I was like, "Okay, yeah, here we are."
It feels. I'm not a great fan of video modes in pinball machines, because I think back in the day, in like WPC times, the video mode was probably as good as something you were playing on an arcade game, and now you've got better games on your phone than you can possibly get on a pinball machine. So they feel like they feel cheap and lesser in comparison, and so they don't feel important. In that game, in Jaws, it feels important. I'm really. It's weird. I'm desperate to get that extra ball. I'm desperate to get those points. I do. I'd say, yeah, congratulations. Really on that.
I mean, I think it works because it's based on a game you play if you play that game today, it's like, wow, this is cheesy, but that's what they were playing back then. So that I think it fit perfectly in the game, is thematically, time capsule of that period.
Yeah, you've done that perfectly. Enzo, before we let Keith go, who's kindly joined us, did you have any final questions for him?
Yeah, I guess there was that thing where, everyone hearing this rumor, and obviously everyone's like, oh, Gary had done that photo in front of that King Kong poster many years ago. And straight away, everyone kind of went, there's going to have to be, especially a lot more of the harsher content creators. There's got to be a building, or else we riot, right? The idea, which I really like, and correct me if I'm wrong, the idea that the building is on the artwork, and we are constantly during the game climbing the building in the background, right? So it doesn't matter whether you're in modes or which mode, there is that constant climb. Is that always happening in the background? It doesn't like stop, or you've got to be in a specific mode? How does that actually work?
Yeah, that's always happening until you fill out a whole floor.
Yeah.
Each one of those windows is a foot marker, like 100 feet, 200 feet, 300 feet. And then when you fill out a floor of windows, it likes a New York City event, and then it'll stop until you do the event, and then it will resume. But yeah, the problem with having a building on the, an actual like sculpt on the building is, the building is super tall, and Kong is 30 feet tall. So we were like mocking some stuff up, and so we have this comically large Kong on this tiny little building, or we make them both really small, and it's just unimpressive. So we did that early, and so then I switched to, okay, what if we're inside the building? So it's like, okay, you're in that upper right area is Anne's apartment, and here's a window, and then this giant hand comes in, grabs the ball, and then drops it in that area. And so I kind of mocked something like that up, but then George was like, no, it's got to have this giant Kong. I was like, yeah, I agree. So I scrapped that idea before it went any further, and then that's how we ended up with the Kong smashing a train.
And he's
incredible.
He's a big Kong. Like, you were holding it in one of the interviews you did with Loser Kid. Like, it looks much smaller in the videos, and then you were holding it. Was the one that you were holding in that was on your desk the same size that ended up in the game?
Yeah. It's bigger than you think. Yeah. It takes up a lot of space back there. He's mounted to the back panel. Yeah. We're still working on some of the animations. But yeah, he can punch the train. He can punch the glass. He can do little dances and stuff. Hey, say hi.
There he is. I've got to say, and I love the punching of the glass. We did speculate on that, didn't we? And so before we were wondering that. I've got to say, a little thing I really noticed. I really like it. It's a small detail. I love the sound the spinners make.
Oh,
really nice touch. Really, really nice touch. Actually, they've got that. Whatever it is, a jungle sound or something. They got something going on with them, which I think really, really adds to it. It's a small bit, but it's nice to see it done. And it's all the small details that go. Who spotted that? Who thought, oh, hold on, let's do that.
Yeah, it's funny because Jerry originally gave us sound. It was a bongo, left, right, left. Each spinner did left, right, left, right, left, right. And I was like, why don't we just have right spinner do right, left spinner do left, and that way if you get them both spinning at the same time, you get kind of more of a random drum pattern than just constant same one over and over.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. I absolutely love it. Keith, I don't even think it's going to be another triumph. I'm very amused that you weren't sure whether Godzilla was going to be, particularly given it's turns out to be, and sort of like the most popular game of all time, probably, and everyone's favorite game. Continue doing what you're doing. I can't say any more than there's never any doubt when you do a game that it's going to be good, which I guess puts extra pressure on you. Massive congratulations to your team, who are obviously so polished, so good at what you do. Absolutely the leaders now in what you do. And thank you very much for joining us. Any last words, Enzo?
I would assume you would know what your next game is, or you taking a break, because I kind of feel like you've worked back to back, like, because obviously you had, like, have you, like, do you already know? Because I know you said when you had done an interview about Jaws that you'd already finished your next game, which was obviously this game. Like, do you know what your next game is, or are you having a break?
Yeah. I already designed the layout for my next game a few months ago.
Oh, wow.
We're just now kicking that project off, and I might do some revisions, but yeah, I've known for probably almost a year now.
Because this is probably your next game. Because I think when you did Jaws, everyone kind of already knew about Kong. This one, funny enough, I was talking to Don yesterday about it, and he's like, we don't actually know anything. Like, it's probably been the most tight-lipped. Because I wonder if he's working on something, and I was like, well, I'll ask him.
No rumors at all. No rumors at all.
No rumors at all. I've heard nothing.
Wow. I'm sure something will leak eventually.
You would think so. Keith, thanks so much for your time. I know you're a busy man, and just massive congratulations, and we're all looking forward to getting our hands on Kong. Keith Elwin, ladies and gentlemen, and Enzo.